and we have the tape rolling. L'tvach, everyone, we counted 28 days, 4 weeks to the Omer. Motzei Shabbos Kodesh, Mitzvah Shem this week, Lag BaOmer. Bezat Hashem, we'll talk about it this Monday. Speak about Lag BaOmer because I'm not exactly sure what will be Thursday night. So, we definitely need a preparatory talk for Lag BaOmer on Monday. So this is what we'll do on Monday. But right now, let's talk about the Baal Shem Tov, the way we do on Motzei Shabbos. This is something from the Holy Rav Avram from Pinchov. And the Holy Reb Avram Mordechai from Pinchov was the son of Rabbi Binyamin Zev Yaakov, but he was orphaned. He was orphaned early in childhood, and he grew up in the house of his brother, Rabbi Yosef, the Maggid of Zamirgrad. And after his brother was appointed as rabbi, he went to the house of the holy man from Zlotcheva, and he was related to, and he learned Torah from him, and he was mishamish 300 rabbanim, all Kedosh Elyon, Baalei Ruach HaKodesh, amongst them Rabbi Shlomo from Karlin, and so forth and on. And he, Avamota from Pinchov, was the father-in-law of the holy Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac from Komarna, the one from Eicha Brocha. In other words, we're talking about a very, very great and holy Jew. And he said that he knew 365 stories from Baal Shem Tov. And every day he would tell one story. Until, at the end he told all the maises that he knew from Baal Shem Tov. And then he started the cycle again. Again. This is the way that he did all his life. The Baal Shem Emunim, that's the Baal Roth, who is the Miyasad of he came from Satmar in Romania, and he was the first, told the Saran. The Baal Roth, he's the told the Saran. He's the one that the Hasidus told the Saran. He's the Me'asharim. This is all his students, and he splits to Shomer Emunim, to Lusaran, to Yitzchak. They're all splinters of the original Tol Saran. It's a sefer called Tol Saran, and sefer Shomer Emunim, unbelievable sefer about Shmir Sabris, Shmir Sinai. And he said that once he was in bed, he was sick, and he lost consciousness for 3 hours until he suddenly started sweating, and he became better. And he said that his neshama was already in the Olam Elyon, and that he saw the Baal Shem HaKodesh goes around with his Talmidim. And he asks, who is this? Who is that? Who's this? Who's going there? So they told him that's the Baal Shem HaKodesh. So he went over to Baal Shem HaKodesh and asked him to give him a bracha for Refuah Shleima. Baal Shem HaKodesh says, what shaychus do you have with me? Because you need to have a shaychus with me in order for me to be able to help you. Were you ever by me? Do you know me? So the Baal Shem Emunim said that his Rav a Mechel from Zlotchev. It's difficult to coincide it. Rabbi Mechel from Zlotchev, I don't know, maybe. Rabbi Zlotchev was the rabbi of the Shem Emunim. It seems to Rabbi Zlotchev was much earlier, but I don't know. I'm not absolutely certain. But it says Rabbi Zlotchev would say every Suda Shlishis in Shabbos Kodesh, Ma'asim B'Hashem HaKodesh. And once it was very late, and my Rebbe already washed my Machronim, and he forgot to say the Ma'asim from you. So I reminded him that he didn't Ma'aser from you. He didn't say a Ma'aser in a fact from Baal Shem Tov. And I understand if my Rebbe is saying a Ma'aser from you, the Vadai, that would give you great Nachas Ruach, great satisfaction. And in that schus, I'm asking the refuah. So Baal Shem Tov said yes. And he put his hand on the head of the Rav HaKodesh Baal Shomer Amonim, and he started sweating, and slowly he became better. And slowly, he improved until he had a first Shleima. Now, Rabbi Yaakov Yitzchak Halevi Orvitz, that's the Choiz of Lublin, the seer of Lublin, Talmud of the Rebbe Melech of Lizhensk, that had a spiritual vision. That's what they call him, the seer. He said, if a person will come to me and would say that he saw the Baal Shem Tov climbing a ladder and go up to the Shemayim, alive, in his body and his clothing, so in the middle of Mezhibos, the town of Mezhibos, that's what it was, he says, I will believe him. He says, because everything that they say about the Baal Shem Tov, it's befitting to believe. And there's another saying that say that every story about Baal Shem Tov is a question whether these stories are factual. Every single one of them is factual. So it is a given saying amongst the tzaddikim that every story about the Baal Shem Tov is fitting to say and to believe. And the belief in that story is that either it happened or it could have happened. That the Baal Shem Tov was so great that any story that you're telling about Baal Shem Tov, either it happened or it could have happened. He was that great. Well, the Baal Shem Tov said that anybody who is talking about the praises of tzaddikim, it is like he is Isaac in Ma'aser Merkava. Ma'aser Merkava is, of course, the teaching of the chariot, the entire Torah Kabbalah. It's an incredible level. Rabbeinu says that in Torah Lekuta Maran, he says that Torah Lamed Zayin, I'm not sure. He says that not every dibor, not every talk is considered a dibor. He says a dibor must have a goodness in it. It has to emanate from true goodness. He says if there's no goodness in it, it's not a dibor. It's empty. It's like all the mices in the world that they say this, that. These are empty. These are basically empty inyanim because there's no good in them. And it is very easy to notice that when you're taking a newspaper from 2 weeks ago, it's pointless. So anything that in 2 weeks is going to be pointless is pointless today as well. Only what? It's exciting. Oh, it's exciting? All right. But it is not toiv in it. So Rabbeinu says that when you praise the tzaddikim, you are elevating the mind. And then you're zoche to das pchinas toiv. You're zoche to goodness. And then your dibur becomes a toiv. That's shvach tzaddikim. Now we're going to be oisek in a very interesting bevadai, but a dibur that a sicho from Rabbeinu that has a little like a question in it, and B'ezrat Hashem will have to talk about it. So let's take a look at today's sicha. Today's sicha. Let me just share the screen. Sicha number 71 in Sichos Haran. Now, the Zohar Kodesh says that it is possible to do tshuva on every avera in the world, but there is one avera, and that is the extraction of a person's seed emptily. Now the person is not married. He says there's no tshuva on that. Tshuva doesn't help. That's what the Zohar says. So Rabbeinu says as follows: Be'inyan mashakosov b'Zohar Kodesh, about that particular matter that is written in the Zohar Kodesh. Shal pgam bris, that the damaging of the covenant. Bifrat man de oshit zo berekanya, especially somebody who spills his seed emptily, chas v'sholem, and moil tshuva. The tshuva does not help. So Rabbeinu says as follows. Listen very carefully. We're going to explain it. It's not an easy thing to understand, but nevertheless. Omar Rabbeinu Zichron Levrach, Rabbeinu Zichron Levrach said as follows: She'ein hadavar ken. This is not so. Rak al hakol moil tshuva. Tshuva helps for everything. No, but the Zohar says that it doesn't help. Ve'omar shebezeh ma'amar, and this is what tonight's sicha will be about. Shebezeh ma'amar, in this particular ma'amar Zohar, he says, En shum odom mevin apshat rak hu levad. Nobody understands what the Zohar is saying and knows how to learn this Zohar, except for Rabbeinu alone. That's it. Nobody else can learn pshat in this Zohar except for him. Vaklal, and the general rule is shebemet moil tshuva bevadai lachet hazeh. Tshuva bevadai helps on that particular sin, even afilu im hir barifshah, even if a person did it a lot of times, and many times. Chas v'sholem. And then he says, and it's already explained in books that were printed. Ikar tshuva, the main tshuva on it, is just to be sorry that you did it, but to stop doing it and not doing it more. Mikan laba, from now on. He says, he has to pass these places, and these, in other words, he will be tested there. That thing where he was before. To be tried, to be tested. When a person has rachmanis on himself, now, and he doesn't do now what he did before, and he breaks his taiva, he breaks his lust. That's the main tshuva. What I would like to concentrate this evening is this seemingly outrageous remark, and not just the remark, but also not just what it says, but also the way it is said. That he said in that particular Maimazor, Ein shum odom mevin apshat rak olevad. No other person understands the pshat in this Maimar except for him alone. And you can tear your hair out. He's saying it in a way that is so provocative. It could have been said something like, you really need to know how to learn this Zohar. Something that would be more diplomatic. It would basically mean the same thing, but it would be easier to swallow. And here goes Rabbeinu, and he pokes you in the eye. And he says, on this particular thing, nobody knows how to learn this Zohar except for me. And it's a very difficult to swallow statement, because what do you mean the Arizal didn't know how to learn the Zohar? Arizal talks about this particular thing. Arizal says he gives a tikkun, and the tikkun of Arizal is 84,000 fasts. And he says it's also, there's a way to do it, a shortcut, but still it says, and that's a partial fix. Arizal didn't know how to learn the Zohar. The Baal Shem Tov didn't know how to learn the Zohar. The Baal Tanya didn't know how to learn the Zohar. The Rebbe Yitzchak of Berditchev didn't know how to learn the Zohar. The Rebbe Blomela from Zhensk didn't know how to learn the Zohar. How can you say such a thing? It awakens in you, a resentment, why are you saying that way? There are many statements of Rabbeinu that on the face of them seem outrageous and irritating. It brings up in you snagdos, it's like a resentment. You don't want to accept it because it is said in such a provocative way. So the question is, why did Rabbeinu say that in such a way? Because everything Rabbeinu said, not only just what he said, but also how he said it, there's a reason for it, and there are secrets in it. In other words, this particular statement, nobody knows how to learn Pshat in this except for me, is a must. It has to be said dafka this particular way. So let's get a little bit into it. And Sebedech Efshar, again, it's a possible, one of the possible explanations. Obviously, there are many, many more and deeper explanations. But in order to understand at least a semblance of that, we need to understand why tshuva works and why on that particular sin of Pgama Bris, especially spitting one's seed into nothing, into emptiness, is such a huge sin that tshuva does not help for that. Why the Zohar says that. And we mainly also need to understand why it is crucial that Rabbeinu will say that nobody knows how to learn Pshat and this except for him. It is necessary for the tshuva to work on that particular sin. Without saying it that way, tshuva would not help. So let's jump into it. The whole thing of the whole concept of tshuva is predicated on the fact that all the limbs and all the sinews and every part and all the bones and everything that exists in a person's body emanates from his brain. Initially, when the father and the mother got together, the initial seed is that which they call, the Zohar Kodesh calls, it's a brain seed. It's a drop of brain. It contains the entire brain codified and miniaturized into one single drop. Microscopic. And that in the environment of the mother, the entire body is created. Everything. A new brain. And a whole body. With eyes and ears and everything. From beginning to end. It all comes from what the Zohar calls a piece of brain. A brain drop. Now, when a person does Lo Aleinu V'Lo Aleichem in Avera, the very same way, Lo Aleinu, the very same way that a person's body is comprised of 613 limbs and sinews. You know, Ramach mitzvahs aseh, 248 mitzvahs, positive commandments, and Shasah 355 negative commandments. And every single limb and sinew and part of these 613 corresponds to one mitzvah of the 613. And they are interconnected. What you do physically in this world is done spiritually in your own spiritual sphere and in the world at large, because the entire world also has 613 mitzvahs, particles as it were. So your own deed, when you decide if you eat with a bracha or without a bracha, the same way that you influence and you are damaging or whatever it is, your own particular spiritual limb or part, body part, as it were, you're influencing the entire existence. It's called Bichlal and Biprat, generally and in detail. Now, we have a world which is behaving with a stopper. You know, in America, when there was shortage of water, I remember in New York, so what they used to do, they used to give these stoppers to put in the shower heads. What that do is it would limit the amount of water that comes out of the shower head. You know, to save water. Well, you'll take a shower, but it's just like you weren't wasting that much water. Similarly, there is a stopper on reality now. The Gemara says various things on how things are going to be in the future. And some of them, I mean all of them really, seem to be quite fantastic. So the Gemara says, just, don't be amazed by that, because there's already such existence in this world, but it's very limited to a specific creature or part or whatever it is. But the reason why it doesn't happen about everything in creation is because there is a stopper. For instance, one of the things that it says a woman in the future, a woman would be pregnant and be given birth at the same time. How can that be? What are you talking about? The Gemara says, look at the chicken. Look at the hen. That's what happens. She's pregnant and giving birth at the same time. It's a continuous cycle. So you'd say, well, how can you compare, a fowl and a woman? The answer is that in the case of the chicken, the Kodesh Baruch Hu has allowed the real nature of the world to be exposed. The rest of nature is held back. So a woman, animals, whatever it is, that can be, either in gestation or giving birth, but it can't be all at the same time. But there's one case out there in which they they coincide at the same time, because that's the real nature of creation. But the Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't want it to happen until time will come. Mimele, all the limbs, they were created from the brain, they're sustained by the brain. So in the future, if chas v'shalom a person will lose a limb, today that's it. He goes to Bituach Leumi and he gets a kitzvah. He gets a help, a stipend. Pension, whatever it is. But in the future, the limb will grow back. Because the fact that today it doesn't regrow is because there's a stopper in place. How do you know? Do you have an example? Yeah. Take a look at the lizard. You cut the lizard's tail off, it grows back. Now that means that the principle is already here, but there's a stopper on it. The same thing acts in Ruchnis. Whenever a person is damaging, one part of 613, limbs and sinews, spiritual limbs and sinews. Spiritually, everything is intact. There is no stopper. So that particular limb or sinew, let's say number 13, can, when you do tshuva, it goes, where is it tshuva? It comes back. Back where to? It goes back to the brain, which is the originator of that particular limb. And it's mamshich, and it draws down a renewal to that particular limb or sinew, spiritual limb or sinew. So every single tshuva, every single avera, has a tikkun. What? It goes back to the source, goes back to the brain, and it's renewed. And there you have it. You did tshuva, and you're mesaken the chet. The only problem is that that particular sin that we are talking about is not a damage in the limbs, that a damage of the brain itself, because these are brain drops. What are you going to do? Well, where will the brain go to regenerate itself? The brain is the source for everything. If the brain is damaged, what you going to do? So even today, almost any, a lot of damage to various parts of the person, whatever it is. So, beseda, it can regrow, it can heal, it can this, it can that. Up to you, whatever it is, according to the physical stopper that Kadosh Baruch Hu put in creation. But brain damage, what can you do with brain damage? That's it. That's the source of everything. If you damage that, that's the source of that statement that tshuva does not help on Pgama Bris, because in Pgama Bris, especially, in the mission into emptiness, it is something which cannot be rectified because the brain itself was damaged. Now, Rabbeinu has said, is using this technique many, many times in Likutei Moharan. In fact, the Torah itself uses that. And that is the system of parallels and substitutions. A person has a body and a soul. The body, is represented by what they call the nefesh habahamis. That's the animal part of a person, which influences a person, lo aleinu, to sin. So the Torah says, something, listen, you can take that principle of the animal part of you and the spiritual, the soul part of you, and there is a parallel to this in reality. Man and animal. It's like a body and soul. So if it's true in one person's body and soul, you can transfer from a person's body and soul into a person and an animal, two separate beings. And what do you do if a person does this particular avera? You take that animal, the specific animal, and you're bringing for a korban beis hamikdash. What are you doing? Because the thing is that when the body, a person uses his body in order to make an avera, the only tikkun is dying. It's inevitable. The Torah says, we're going to use a parallel transference from, instead of that body dying, So we're going to transfer, because we have the same relationship of man and animal like this in you, in a grander scale, a parallel, division to man and animal. It is you and a carbon. And you come to Beis Hamikdash and you bring and the animal dies. Instead of your body dies, the animal dies. And it works on you. The tshuva works. It's as if you died. That's what they say. Then when a person used to bring a carbon Beis Hamikdash, and the animal was shechted, the person is supposed to A, think tshuva in his mind, because otherwise it doesn't work, and B, the person should have seen, seeing an animal die, no matter how used to it you are, it's not an easy thing to look at. And a person would look at the animal being slaughtered, and he would say to himself, this is what should have been done to me. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his Rahmanas, has allowed a transfer to a parallel manifestation of that principle of body and soul into man and animal. And you can bring the animal and it becomes a carbon. So this is the source that there are parallel manifestations of the same principle, and you can transfer from one, there's a Torah sanction to bring it from one manifestation to the next. Rabbi Nachman uses that in many, many different occasions. Now we have a principle that the head, the brain, and the body also have various manifestations, parallel manifestations. For instance, the person himself, he has his own private brain, and he has his body. Then you have Am Yisrael and the Umas Ha'olam, the nations of the world. The nations of the world are the body, and Am Yisrael is the brain. That's why we say that in the future, so the kings will be your babysitters, and queens will be your nursemaids. What is this? You said it's not a megalomania kind of thing. It's because it's very simple. There is a give and take relationship between your brain and your body. Your brain takes care of your body. At the same time, your body takes care of your brain. It is the role of the body to make sure that the brain is protected. The brain gets fed. The most oxygen in the body gets the brain. The most energy that is expanded by a person is expanded by the brain. There's more energy expended by the brain than any other part of the body. I don't know if it's including the heart, not including, I'm not exactly sure. But, so the body, it's incumbent on the body to serve the brain. And it's incumbent on the brain to take care of the body. To lead it, to make sure it doesn't get into danger, take care of it, and so forth and so on. So you have Am Yisrael and the Goyim. Right now, it's separate. So the Goyim invent all kinds of different things for themselves. In the future, Mashiach will come, and that fact that Am Yisrael is the brain will be elevated, and the interrelations between the nations of Am Yisrael will be a natural one. They will have their natural place, and Am Yisrael will have its natural place. And the same kind of relationship of a head and a body that exists between Am Yisrael and the world, and a person in his own body, also exists in Am Yisrael itself, in which the tzaddik is the brain, is the mind, is the head, and the people are the limbs. But there's one, so Mimela, if you're transferring the rectification process from a person personally, spiritually, his brain and his limbs, and the limbs were damaged, his brain was damaged now. So he cannot fix this privately by doing tshuva. But if you were to parallel transfer to a more general manifestation which is Am Yisrael and the tzaddik. A body is the entire you, and the brain is the tzaddik. Your brain, who is now a limb, can go back to the mind of Am Yisrael, which is the tzaddik, and get tikkun for your brain. And tshuva is possible. There's only one little caveat. And the caveat is that there's something that makes this thing, this appendage, my hand. It does everything that I want it to do. It does not ask me any questions. It doesn't question any decision. It is totally subordinate to what my mind tells it to do. Talk about, totalitarianism. Totalitarianism. The mind is an absolute ruler. That's it. My hand cannot, chas v'chalila, hit somebody, and I say, I hit you? My hand did it. I didn't do it. You can do that. Why? Because my hand is totally subordinate to me. My hand doesn't have its own will. It is nullified. It's nullified any kind of independent will. It's nullified. It's whatever the brain wants, that's what it does. This is the thing that makes it my limb. Otherwise, it wouldn't be my limb. The question is, what will turn the entire you, including your brain, into the limb of the overall brain of Am Yisrael, which is a tzaddik. Just because you want it to be so and you claim it is so, that doesn't make it so. The only thing that makes it so is when you are coming to the tzaddik, and the tzaddik's mind, he's telling you something that your own mind rebels against. That your own mind says, I'm sorry, this is not acceptable. And what do? You nullify your own mind. You take that objection that you have, and you say, I don't know enough. My brain is damaged. I cannot rely on my mind, to object to anything that the tzaddik says. If the tzaddik says so, then this is the way it is. And that particular active nullification, you feel the urge to object. He says, I'm sorry. And he says, okay, as sorry as I am, I don't care. My mind is not able to object to anything that tzaddik says. And this is called a bitul. And with that active bitul, you are becoming a limb for the tzaddik. And that particular test and the mechanism of becoming a limb to the tzaddik as a brain is activated with this provocative statement. Nobody knows to learn this Zohar except for me. And what do? What your mind says? Hey, what? Arizal didn't know how to learn the Zohar? You want to tell him Baal Shem Tov didn't know how to learn the Zohar? The Baal Tana didn't know how to learn the Zohar? The Chayzer of Lublin didn't know how to learn the Zohar? The Rebbe of Melech didn't know how to learn the Zohar? Rebbe Levi of Berditcher didn't know how to learn the Zohar? Rebbe of Mezhibos didn't know how to learn the Zohar? Rebbe Zisha of Anipal didn't know how to learn the Zohar? How can you say that nobody knows how to learn Pshat and Zohar except for you? Now that your objections have arisen, means your own mind, the independence of your own mind has been manifested, now you can nullify that. and put it aside. He says, as much as my brain comes up with all these objections, my brain, excuse me, is damaged and cannot make a decision when my brain is only a limb to the tzaddik. And when you are mevatel your mind to the tzaddik in such a way, it needs a provocation. It needs, because otherwise, why not? I can do whatever I want, and I just got to, rest on the tzaddik and bada bing, bada boom. I'm fine. I'm taking. No, you have to go through this action of nullifying your mind, just nullifying, just throwing away the objections in your own mind. And this is how you become a limb to the tzaddik. You're transferring from your own brain and body. Your answer to your entire self with your brain is just a body to the brain that is a tzaddik, and tshuva helps. That's why it has to be said in a provocative manner, because otherwise it wouldn't raise the test. You won't be able to nullify yourself. You just agree to do what he wants. No. The thing is, you need to disagree. And why push aside your own mind, and then you're nullified to the tzaddik, and then it works. And we'll finalize B'ezrat Hashem this sicha with something we said last week, and I saw a makor for what Rabbeinu said, the sicha that we learned last week, in this week's parsha. If you remember, last Motzei Shabbos, we learned Sicha Ein, that Rabbeinu says, he wonders, how is it possible that we are letting Kadosh Baruch Hu to make decrees on Am Yisrael? We shouldn't let him. How do we not let him? This is when you come to Kadosh Baruch Hu and you ask him to be mekar of you. When somebody does that, when a Jew does that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu pushes aside everything that he's doing and is turning to that Jew. And Mimele, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not make decrees. Well, this is a fantastic concept. Where did you hear of such a thing? The answer is in this week's parsha, because it's two parshas, so it appears twice. And Rashi says it twice. The same thing. One of them is the prohibition of eating blood, and the other one is the prohibition of sacrificing one's children to the idol of the Molech. In both these things, Lo Aleinu, the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "V'nosati ponai ba'ishahu," and I will put my face in that person, and I will chop him off from my nation. And Rashi says something fantastic. Rashi says, what is v'nosati ponai? I would put my face into that person. So he says, Rashi says, pnai shali. Pnai shali means I will unbusy myself. And Rashi says as follows, I divert myself Mikola Sokai, from all the businesses that I'm dealing with, and we're going to put my face on that to take care of that particular person. So here we have the principle of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Something happens, HaKadosh Baruch Hu pushes aside everything else he's doing and concentrating only on that person. Now that is for the negative. And we have a rule that Midah Tova Meruba, that if it's right, if it's true for something negative, it is 500 times truer for something positive. So if it's true, HaKadosh Baruch Hu pushes all his other business and just concentrates and puts his face into that person about the bad, how much more so when you come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and you beg him to bring you closer to him that he pushes everything to the side. I just thought I'd share it with you. Bezrat Hashem, this coming Monday, instead of doing Sipurei Maisius, we will do Bli Neder, a preparatory Sicha for Lag BaOmer, Shem Bayuchai, because Thursday is going to be Lag BaOmer, and I truly, truly hope, to be in Meiron. I hope Kadosh Baruch Hu, will graciously bring me. Shimon agrees, and he'll bring me to Meiron. So it is incumbent, just in case, to have a special Sicha about Lag BaOmer ahead of time.